Good God. Stop the narcissists now, please, God, please. Because narcissists are naturally talented imposters, charmers, and deceivers, many judges get duped on a routine basis by NPT parents who are simply using the court and the judge to continue to humiliate, exert control, and abuse their eggs and force their eggs to react to them in some way. The narcissistic personality will demonstrate backhanded, insulting behavior to others in order to let others know how special the narcissist is and how others should be adoring them. Behavior like totally ignoring others, being late for important meetings or events, simply not attending or walking out of events, consistently going over budget, avoiding being a team player at all costs, refusing to consult or ask for help, are all common backhanded behaviors. Narcissist love is a love for a person other than the self, perceived subjectively as part of the self. A person relates to someone narcissistically if she experiences that person not as a center of their own independent activity, but as part of his or herself. If the person does not behave as a narcissistic one expects or wishes, she may be disappointed, offended, or even enraged. The narcissist feels almost as if the arm ceased to obey us. Narcissistic injury is far more impactful to the NPD person. One theory is that from a very young age, the child becomes an NPD individual was totally consistently overindulged with the parents to such a degree that they never had to experience the real life events of disappointment or anyone telling them that they occasionally are wrong or make errors. These parents defend your child's behavior to the nth degree and are overindulgent both physically and emotionally. The narcissist takes your creativity, your emotions, your thoughts and mind, but they can't take your soul unless you give it to freely. Your soul is your last stand and you had better fortify it because your soul is the ultimate goal. The narcissist takes your creativity, your emotions, your thoughts and mind, but they can't take your soul unless you give it freely. Your soul is your last stand and you had better fortify it because your soul is the ultimate goal. Your soul is your last stand and you had better fortify it because your soul is the ultimate goal. Many women who have been a victim of the narcissist state that they have been victimized by more than one narcissist in their life. Some have had an NPD parent reputation of being victimized by multiple NPDs, lead some women to feel that they have a sign over their head inviting NPDs to seek them out, and in a way this is likely true. Once victimized by NPD, many victims are primed for yet another round from yet another predator. Narcissists get away with what they get away because they were so very talented in presenting themselves as innocent victims of their ex, their boss, their parents, etc. They have an uncanny talent to manipulate situations and people and to twist the obvious fact, fit their confabulated premise. Narcissists often make outrageous claims of previous honors and accomplishments of close personal friendships with notable people or organizations. Cursory examination reveals this as pure fantasy. Narcissists are never happy with what they have, always looking for something better. Mine liked to rearrange furniture constantly, way more than a normal person. I used to see it as like quickie. Now I realize he could never settle in his own skin. What a sad existence. The victims of the narcissist get trapped into becoming narcissistic supply by either brainwashing or because the individual discovers that they have been taken in and may have done the narcissist bidding. This is both embarrassing, potentially damaging to NS's integrity and reputation. The only choice is to continue to serve the narcissist or to keep quiet about the narcissist's secret. The narcissistic parent abuses in an intensely subtle and devious fashion. They are guilty of severe emotional and mental abuse, and no one outside of the family would ever suspect anything wrong. These wild victims quite often go unnoticed, untreated, and not helped by adults outside of the immediate family. Survival. He is holding nearly all of my belongings hostage. Is about control. If he can't control you, he will do everything in his power to destroy you. Do not take the bet. No material possessions are worth your life, my friend. Narcissists often tell mistruths, twisted truths, or outright lies with impunity. Often believing their own lies and telling outrageously unbelievable lies, they may become insulted or fly into rage when their lies are challenged. The best way to cope with the narcissist is to get away from them. The treatment success is extremely poor and requires the narcissist to confront their own behavior and inner damages, and they often simply refuse to do that, even acknowledge that they have any problems at all, the next best thing is to learn to block their narcissist behavior. In short, ignore them and remove the narcissistic supply that they are getting from you. They hate to be ignored and will go on to someone else to find ease. The narcissist is an unabashed violator of boundaries, physical, emotional, mental. They will make decisions that are not theirs to make, and they will assume that they have the right to use, borrow, and keep anything that belongs to others. They will routinely violate budgets with offhanded remarks or vague explanations. The narcissists never really enter genuine, intimate relationship, and they never really come to love others. They have no real ego or personality development. Rather, they rely on others to give them a reflection of themselves, to be mirrors in effect. Usually, grandiose narcissists were treated as if they were superior in their early childhood, and they move through life expecting this type of treatment to continue in relationships. Grandiose narcissists are more likely to openly engage in infidelity or leave their partner abruptly if they feel that they are not getting the special treatment that they think they are entitled to. Narcissists enjoy the cat and the mouse game, but like cats, they eventually tire of it. They get bored when the mouse is too damaged to struggle any longer. When the mouse is too maimed to defend, that's the point when the narcissist will discard. They will leave the mouse to die a slow death. Psychopaths are rare individuals who display what is sometimes called malignant narcissism and a capacity to use the situation for their own gain, with total disregard for the inconvenience or even suffering that their behavior might cause to others. At their worst, they may also be sadistic, although it is sometimes said that they lack impulse control. The opposite may be true. Many of these guys are very methodical. Narcissists in the workplace function exactly as they do outside of the workplace. They curry favor with those they feel can be of benefit to them. They have no moral compass when it comes to the good of the group versus their own good. It's not a case of the moral compass malfunctioning. It is a case of having no moral compass at all. They work very hard at making you look bad so that they can look good. They rip me to shreds whenever I apologize. Healthy people hear and apologize and think it's time to adjust and move on. But narcissists hear an apology and it starts salivating like wild dogs given fresh meat. They are pleased you have admitted to your inferiority and they are ready to milk it for all its worth, grind you down to a stump. The only character a narcissist has is the fake one they show to the world. Survival. Living as a child of the narcissist is isolating, so you get no perspective, and the smallest mistake will get blown up into a giant problem in seconds. As a result, I grew up very nervous, very concerned about grades, piano lessons, not making any sort of mistakes, worried about failing in the first choice, for things completely out of control, because I would know I have to justify myself, and knowing blame was always just waiting around the corner. Not as an adult, I have to work not to beat myself up over minor things. I'm getting better at time, but it's taken a lot of awareness and time. Narcissists are master at mind control. They'll have you doubting your choices and your tests. When you see that you have just possessed something that has made you very happy, they will say something like, it's nice if you like that sort of thing. You'll begin wondering if it isn't that nice after all. I used to feel sorry for him for being so shallow. That's when I used to hope he would grow and change because of this. Now I have given up and just have resigned myself to the fact that he is just an acquaintance that I don't like very much and with whom I need to raise my children. It's kind of weird how little I feel about him now. Weird to think I spent so many years with this now almost stranger. Asking for forgiveness from someone that may be narcissistic tends to inflate the ego instead of impressing change and moving forward in a positive direction. That appears to me that the narcissist will not only refuse to forgive the individual, but also make sure the individual is ignored, neglected, and made to feel worthless. They continue to gloat about their righteous stance and continue to demean rather than build. A person who's truly narcissistic will respond with extreme anger if he receives a challenge to his ego, an ego that is both fragile and strongly defended. This response may look like an overblown rage fit following a minor slight, or it may take the form of a cold vindictiveness administered by acts of retaliation. Underneath the superficial charm, the narcissist psychopath always has a me-first mentality. If you work with such a person, you may begin to see signs that she thinks that everything is about her, and crucially, it will become clear that control power is a major part of her game plan. However, this can be well concealed beneath the veneer of friendliness and concern for others. Psychopathy is generally viewed as a particularly virulent form of narcissism in which the person is not only very much focused on herself himself but also highly manipulative, sometimes sadistic, and very much into control and power. One prominent characteristic of psychopathy is the presence of what is usually called a glib, superficial charm. The narcissist has expansive cognitive style. Example, has an undisciplined imagination and exhibits a preoccupation with immature and self-glorifying fantasies of success, beauty, and love. Is minimally constrained by objective reality, takes liberties with facts, and often lies to redeem self-illusions. Part of our therapy was for him to plan date night. One evening it was a picnic in the park. Turns out the OW was there the whole time watching us all prearranged. He even paraded me before her when we went for a walk as if to say to her, "Now you can see why my life is so miserable. I cannot even fathom the thought process behind this." Narcissists don't come across as all bad, at least not at first. They are often actually somewhat accomplished, at least superficially. They play act at the hallmark of the responsible life, but if you scratch the surface, you'll find half-assedness, the lack of good friends, the dearth of stick-to-itiveness. There's sparkle without much substance. Narcissists don't do substance. They take commitment. That takes commitment, and they are easily bored. Many people do get to a point where the mere thought of their narcissist brings up the feeling of loathing, disgust, and indifference. While I'm not advocating hate, I would say indifference is what you should be striving for, especially if you do have to continue to engage with them at some level. The narcissist has insouciant mood temperaments. Example, manifests a general air of nonchalance, imperturbability, and faint tranquility, appears coolly unimpressionable or buoyantly optimistic, except when narcissistic confidence is shaken, at which time either rage, shame, or emptiness is briefly displayed. Narcissists are expressly haughty. Example, acts in an arrogant, superfluous, pompous, and disdainful manner, flouting conventional rules of shared social living, viewing them as naive or inapplicable to self, reveals a careless disregard of personal integrity and self-important indifference to the rights of others. Narcissists are interpersonally exploitative. Example, feels entitled, is unempathetic, and expects special favors without assuming reciprocal responsibility, shamelessly takes others for granted and uses them to enhance self and indulge desires. The clinical name is narcissism, but doesn't lying, cheating, lack of loyalty, being manipulative, bullying, sadism, etc. sound a lot like selfishness and a lack of character. Somewhere along the line, these monsters decided to use these weapons against the good-hearted people of this world, and then they tell these targets that they are the ones like that, and the poor little narcissist is the victim. The narcissist's appetite for the narcissistic feed did not go away when the relationship ended. In fact, the need to be fed often increases tenfold after the breakup, especially if the breakup involved injury to their ego. The supply they are seeking after the breakup is much different from the supply that they receive when in a relationship where they once derive pleasure from feeling superior and needed. They now derive pleasure from seeing their former partner hurting. It is tempting to make excuses for the behavior of the aging mother or the father who may be living in their own with failing health. But in dealing with the aging narcissist, this normal sense of human compassion will be used as a tool by the narcissist to exploit and manipulate the well-meaning adult child. The aging narcissist has the same needs for respect and compassion as an elderly person. The problem is that the primary caregiver, often an adult child who has long suffered at the hands of the self-absorbed person, must cope with the increasing level of narcissistic behavior that accompany old age. The empathy turns into apathy. Your illness or bad day at the office was once emphasized with chicken soup or the bouquet of flowers, but no matter how hard you have it, they remind you that they have it worse than you, and as you try harder and harder to create an ounce of empathy, it backfires with only apathy. Narcissists can seem to love you. Narcissists can make it look like love. A narcissist may say the word of love. The narcissist can think it's love. Unfortunately, when involved with the narcissist, you are enmeshed but not in love. You can be enmeshed and mistake that for love, but enmeshment and love are not the same thing. Narcissists are Jekyll at the office and Hyde when at home. Everyone loves Jekyll and thinks you are so lucky to be married to such a charming, charismatic person. But when Hyde returns home, you are faced with moodiness, rage disorder, alcoholism, isolation, and an unwillingness to take part in family activities. This Jekyll and Hyde routine occurs because it is exhausting to maintain a false sense of self-right. 8 hours a day, and they ultimately resent you and your family for reminding them of their true inabilities. The narcissist's sense of self, which is not progressed past that of a very young child, they cannot deal with the reality of a mirror being held before them. Unlike the alcoholic, who may be in due course see the light, the narcissist simply does not have the emotional skills to step outside of themselves and glimpse the truth in a mirror. Their sense of empathy is that the sufferer lives in a bubble that can only accommodate themselves. Self-reflection is definitely not in the narcissist's bag of skills, and expecting them to be capable of doing so can cause disaster. We should be really thankful for the discard phase. It is a phase that saves us. How many of us will still be hanging or trying to make it right? This is the only good thing the narcissist has ever done to us. Most targets are likable people, reliable, dependable, lovable, stable, trustworthy. If we weren't, we would not be so shocked and stunned to find how opposite a narcissist to us, and how the only way they could have possibly gotten close to us is by wrestling their way into our heads and hearts via lies and manipulation. Your approval of them no longer matters. You used to be the one and the only person whose opinion truly mattered. But now a compliment to them goes unnoticed. At this point, if your narcissist is disgusted by you, your compliments are deemed as needy and desperate. They must now go elsewhere to seek approval from those that still admire and whom haven't caught on to their narcissistic ways. No matter where you are in your relationship, there's actual signs where your prince or princess charming begins to show their true narcissistic self. It's important to understand that your partner isn't changing like a chameleon. A narcissist must blend in with healthy, social functioning people so that they can perpetuate their false sense of self. Their colors change, but they are still a chameleon. Unfortunately, they can never uphold their camouflage for too long, which is why they must need new things, new people, and new supplies so they can discard the old, which ends up being you. It's possible for a person to live out their entire life, and many have, without realizing that there's something profoundly wrong with their parent. What happens is that the parent convinces the child, the adult child, that there is something profoundly wrong with them. This is how narcissists operate, and they are very successful at what they do, often convincing their children that they are at fault for everything that goes wrong in the parent's life, and that they are no good, and that no matter what they do, they can never please the parent or even get it right. The narcissist dotting turns into negating. You were once told that you are smart, attractive, and fun, and your outgoing nature was a major turn on, but now your narcissist sees you as the opposite. Your intelligence is now seen as a cunning. Your attractiveness is now overzealous, and your wit and humor are now vulgar. The very wonderful traits that once loved about you are now the reason for the relationship's demise, and they remind you of it daily. Perhaps you have been promoted or won that award you have been seeking, but instead of praise, the narcissist will blame, and working too hard to seeking too much attention. All of your accomplishments are deemed as threats to your partner's very existence because they know they can't keep up with you. You also threaten their own spotlight of receiving praise and approval from others, so you will be told that your success aren't that great, so pipe down. The more you research and learn about narcissism, and the more you realize they are playing manipulative games with you, the more disgusting they'll become in your eyes. There will come a point when you can no longer pretend with them, and more importantly, there'll come to a time when you will no longer put up with the abuse towards you. You will walk away and never look back. This is one of the most harmful yet extremely common daydreams of the child of narcissists. It's an understandable one. Who wouldn't want a loving parent who at the end of their life acknowledges their love and pride and gratefulness for their child? One of the most painful ones that the child of the narcissist has to overcome is accepting the reality that this will never happen. It's a very deep pain and a very real one. Come to grips with it. Make may take months or years to be stable. It must be a gradual process, yet it is the key to escaping the trap of the narcissist parent. There will usually be two differing behaviors from the narcissist who discovers that they cancer or other life-threatening illness. There will be an enormous amount of self-pity and an incredible amount of complaining. But there will also be an unusual form of self-importance evident. This is because the presence of the illness brings them extra attention, something which they thrive on. The problem is many of us is still thinking that the fake person we met in the beginning is real, and we keep waiting for this wonderful person to re-emerge. If this person we fall in love with, we haven't the ability to see that this person never truly existed. He was a figment of our imagination and acted in a play as simple as a real man. The man that we believe we love isn't real. The real man that stands before us, belittling us, devaluing us, is the man he truly is. That the man was just a fallacy. Survival code. We should not kill ourselves with the hope that they will change. I just think it is giving them another excuse to say they are unable. It's much worse than that. They refuse and resist. They allow their ego to be seen around others when it should be as silent and invisible as they expect us to be. They control others specifically to avoid having to control themselves. I can nearly guarantee that you had your identity quite together prior to the narcissist entering your life. One of the serious narcissists, decent narcissists, target those they do is to rob us of our good qualities, and that make us so attractive, not just our vulnerabilities or weak points, our solid identities and their lifeblood. Being in the receiving end of a narcissist, of a person who lacks empathy, shows a reality into the human condition that we didn't want to believe existed. Watching people side with the abuser, disbelieve you, and even worse, bully or smear you along with the narcissist is highly traumatic and isolating. It's within our human nature or socialization to side with the crowd, and the abuse against momentum by getting to the crowd early and then playing up to them, which is their perverse talent. If you add it to your childhood moral and religious upbringing, such as golden truth, the narcissist will tell you that you are brainwashed and in deprogramming. They think you are defective because you don't have a predatory nature like they do. Survivor code. On the outside, the most helpful, loving individual, everyone loved him. A true grand performance. At home, a sullen, ugly, hateful man. The hardest part for me is few believing me, and the why didn't you just leave statements. Unless you have experienced it, it's almost impossible to explain. Survivor. I thought I just needed to work harder to understand, to gain the reciprocation of what I had already given. Come to find out, I was only passing the test, the checking of the boxes of what it was she was looking for. The predator had found her prey. Walk in the opposite direction and stay well away. Hopefully there will be a time in the future it would be made clear that narcissists are not fit to be in normal society. They need to be kept on a separate planet or an island with other narcs to feed off each other. Although they're very good at saying the right words and training the connection when it suits them. Anyone who is involved with a narcissist knows that something is off. Normal, healthy relationships develop into a trust and evolve into intimacy, where there is respect and reciprocity. A relationship with a narcissist will never grow, will never evolve, there will never be trust, there will never be respect, and it will always be all about them. Combine an empath's need to protect with the narcissist's need to be lord and master, and you have got a self-perpetuating cycle of disaster. Once established, it is almost impossible for an empath to break away, because doing so, it will cause the narcissist so much pain. The empath will first to absorb the pain themselves, believing that they and they alone have the power to fix the narcissist, which is ironically narcissistic itself. Survivor. Never changed. She never changed. I did not know about narcissism. Everything I read, it makes so much sense. I used to stop my life on someone like this, waiting, wanting him to change, grow, have empathy. Have empathy. Never happened. He passed away. I'm not getting my life, mine back. I had to learn that. So glad I am. If you are involved with a narcissist, the house advice really are irrelevant. Despite your need to understand and to fix the problem, no amount of your suffering is going to change things. No amount of your giving is going to change the things, and no amount of your love and endless devotion is going to change things. Trying to fix someone is futile behavior, no matter how much you may want to. When it comes to relationships and people, you really only have two choices. You can accept them as they are or you leave. Behind closed doors, we saw an evil monster while everyone else saw a nicest, most helpful person ever. It was so frustrating keeping up the facade and hiding the truth while I helped hide the truth. He was destroying me. People, please be aware. These evil beings are but out there. Educate yourself. Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru. Love you, God. Love you, love you, love you. Good God, stop the narcissists now, please, God, please. Because narcissists are naturally talented imposters, charmers, and deceivers. Many judges get duped on a routine basis by NPT parents who are simply using the court and the judge to continue to humiliate, exert control, and abuse their ex and force their ex to react to them in some way. The narcissistic personality will demonstrate backhanded, insulting behavior to others in order to let others know how special the narcissist is and how others should be adoring them. Behavior like totally ignoring others, being late for important meetings or events, simply not attending or walking out of events, consistently going over budget, avoiding being a team player at all costs, refusing to consult or ask for help, are all common backhanded behaviors. Narcissist love is a love for a person other than the self, perceived subjectively as part of the self. A person relates to someone narcissistically if she experiences that person not as the center of their own independent activity, but as part of his or herself. If the person does not behave as a narcissistic one expects or wishes, she may be disappointed, offended, or even enraged. The narcissist feels almost as if the arm ceased to obey us. Narcissistic injury is far more impactful to the MPD person. One theory is that